Welcome to a very early edition of the Mandatory. We're coming to you right after Naoya Inoue took care of Marlon Tapales by TKO in the 10th round. He gets it done. He becomes undisputed in two weight classes, Brian. This is another performance by Inoue where he gets it done. I thought he was going to get it done earlier, and we're going to get into everything. We're going to break it all down. But before we do that, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We're at TheMandatory TKO. And you know what, Brian? Let's get right into it. This was a fight that Marlon Tapales, he looked like a true warrior. Like he stayed in it and he fought better than I thought. What were your thoughts on this bout?
I would agree with that. I think that Naoya Inoue was still dominant, right? Like he won every single round, in my opinion, or just about, right? But I think we really saw some great moments from Marlon Tapales in the fight, where he was able to back Inoue up at times, where he was able to land on him, land straight left hands, not sort of wilt when getting hit to the body as much as I expected. I thought that Inoue was going to break him down to the body relatively early in that fight, and that didn't happen, although kind of did because he dropped him in round three. Um, and I think that Inoue was not getting, I don't want to say getting frustrated in there. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but it was more so like he fought as if he expected Marlon Tapales to sort of be broken down a little bit earlier, but Tapales took more than I think everyone expected and was able to drag this fight on to the 10th round before eventually getting knocked out. And it looked like he just had nothing left.
All right, probably got to unmute my mic. It's really early here on the West Coast. It's like 4 a.m. From what I kind of saw from that fight, it wasn't like the most dominating. Well, in a way, essentially won pretty much every round. But I thought he would have more of the finish early on from rounds 1 through 6. But I think it just makes me want to give a guy like Marlon Tapales a lot of credit because, listen, it was the fourth round, I believe, that he was knocked down, and I had him winning in a way, essentially from rounds 1 through 4. I thought that's when he would get it done because he's taking care of southpaws before the fourth round. And I think Marlon Tapales, I believe, is the only southpaw that has gone to the 10th round with Inoue, which is extremely impressive. I mean, Marlon Tapales looked way better than Cool Boy Steph did against him. Now, there were some things that Marlon Tapales did, like standing right in front of Inoue. That's never good. All right, that's never something that you want to do in front of Inoue because Inoue was continuously landing the right hand. He was landing to the body, but Marlon Tapales did some really good things in that fight. So let's give him all the credit in the world. He took some powerful shots. He was able to land some good combos, but Tapales just doesn't have that power that Inoue does, right? So within this whole fight, I'm like, if Tapales doesn't get the knockout, I highly doubt he's going to win on the cards. Because if I was being generous, maybe I would give him the eighth round. Maybe if I'm being generous. But for the most part, I had Inoue winning every round. But nonetheless, another great performance by Naoya Inoue. And it just shows that when you're undisputed in two weight classes, we're going to talk about who's pound for pound, but we're going to talk about that. But what is next for a guy like Inoue now? He's accomplished so much and he's arguably the best boxer in the world, arguably put on one of the best performances of the year when he fought Stephen Coolboy Steph Fulton. So what is next for him at this point?
Well, it apparently looks like he's going to stay at 122 for a little bit, which I think was always low key the plan. Like I had heard something about this before where he's not going to move up to featherweight as quickly as we thought. And I think you could see why in this fight to some degree, right? Like I think he wants to sort of perfect his craft in this weight class first before moving up as he did at 118, as he did in prior weight classes. And not to say that he isn't the best in his weight class. He is. He showed that once again, and he showed that he is by miles. But at the same time, we expected Marlon Tapales to be out of there quickly for a reason. And now Inoue probably wants to refine himself because he's one of these psycho competitors who's always going to try to get better and better. That leaves the question of who is he actually going to fight next, right? And I think that there are some interesting dance partners in this weight class. The two that probably jump out are Louis Neri and Sam Goodman. Louis Neri, very talented fighter. Sam Goodman, undefeated Australian fighter. You also have Akhmadaliev, who Marlon Tapales beat earlier this year, who Matchroom has already tweeted out. Akhmadaliev will see you soon in a way, which, I think Akhmadaliev needs to probably beat a guy or two first, given that he did lose to Marlon Tapales and beat a real guy. But at the same time, Akhmadaliev is still, as of now, or as of before this fight, was number one ranked by the WBA. Louis Neri is by the WBC, and Sam Goodman is at least one or two of the other Alphabet promotions, number one ranked contenders. So I feel like it's going to be one of those guys. I feel like, you're undisputed. You're going to try to remain undisputed by fighting your mandatory. Chantel, what do you think? And then we can get some comments on this on, the night tonight, because we have some people watching here with us who are up at 6 a.m. East Coast time, 3 a.m. Pacific, that we're very appreciative of. And I know a lot of people want to get back to sleep. So
Yo, Brian's so tired he thinks it's 6. It's 7 o'clock where you're at. It's 4 o'clock here. Brian is
I
tired.
woke up at 6 a.m. I woke up, look, so okay, real quick. I had my 6 a.m. alarm after being up till like one something last night because Christmas. And I saw your text where you were like, Tapales is in the ring. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, and I'm on the
Ran
West Coast, so when I woke up, it was like 2:30 in the morning. I was like, okay, I got a little bit of time before this fight because I figured ring walks would be around like 3 a.m., maybe 4 a.m. Like I wasn't expecting it to be at 3 a.m., like maybe 3:30. And I woke up and Marlon Tapales is walking to the ring, and I'm like, oh snap! Like I gotta,
by the
I gotta.
time by the
That's
time I got my
crazy.
by the time I got my TV on, Naoya Inoue was being introduced, and I saw his name on the screen, and I was like, "Oh my god! Thank goodness I woke up in
Yeah,
time."
I was worried you wasn't gonna wake up because I texted you and I didn't hear anything. I'm like, this dude's asleep. But yeah, I think Louis Neri is probably the best fight to make. And yeah, they are in negotiations. We are gonna get to your comments, by the way, guys. Louis Neri, I think, is the fight to make. And it's kind of interesting because I believe Louis Neri, wasn't he knocked out by Brandon Figueroa?
Yeah, and that's something we talked about on the show.
He
Like
was. Okay, yeah, he was.
he's got a little bit more of a history. Sam Goodman is kind of proving himself, still undefeated, so there's some curiosity there. But Luis Neri he's a big puncher, tough challenge, but he did
Very
lose to
big
Brandon
puncher.
Figueroa. Yeah.
Very, very, very. I think that would be a very interesting fight because it's like power against power. I still think that there's some interesting fights to make in this weight class, but I think essentially, in a way, he still beats them all. Like I think he just like makes his reign in this division, continues to stay at the top. But I think to me, that's the most interesting fight, unless he decides to move up a weight class again, and then things get really, really interesting. But I think that's the fight to make. That's the fight that fans want to see is against Louis Neri, and then maybe Akhmadaliev, because if we remember, Akhmadaliev was supposed to beat Marlon Tapales, and I said this in the preview. That was a fight where a lot of people were like, "Hey, Akhmadaliev is going to win," and Marlon Tapales surprised everybody, got the victory. It was a split decision, if I'm not mistaken. But nonetheless, if they give us that fight, Akhmadaliev and Inoue, I think that's a fight that we all want to see because that was a fight that was brewing for such a long time. So if it's not Akhmadaliev and it's not Louis Neri, it doesn't really matter to me because I'm going to pick Inoue either way. But those would probably be the two fights. And then there's obviously speculation of him possibly moving up a weight class after he gets that done. Let's get to some comments actually, because we just got one. Brian, I want you to read this one out because this one is really interesting to me.
Makeshift 2-3. Thank you for joining the show. I'd love to see Inoue move up in weight class and fight Robesi Ramirez. Wow. It's funny. Robesi Ramirez, I believe, wasn't he the co-feature in Inoue, one of Inoue's cards in Japan? I feel like he was.
Just coming off a loss though.
Yeah, but if you're gonna move up to featherweight, that makes sense. Just from the standpoint of like promotionally, Top Rank could make that happen.
I don't think it makes sense for Ramirez though. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if he wants.
Well, he'll get paid to get his ass whooped in
Yeah.
Japan. That's the thing. He'll get seriously paid. No, I don't think this is the fight that's gonna happen next. Let's get to some more comments. We've got a bunch from a bunch of people. Tyrone the Great says too much smoke at featherweight, and they're down for the smoke. I think in a way is going to be a featherweight at some point. I think we all are resigned to that, but I think it'll probably be like a year or two down the line. I think at minimum he defends his undisputed title twice in 2024 and then maybe moves up in 2025. And that might be the last weight class of his career. We'll see how far he wants to continue to push it, but maybe it's 130. But I think 126 is sort of his destiny at some point, Chantel. And I think that's going to be no earlier than like 2025, maybe, because I think there's still a challenge or two at this weight class that he probably wants to really conquer.
I honestly think if he fights Louis Neary, which is the one that they're kind of negotiating for May, and then he fights Akhmadaliev, that he'll probably move up a weight class after that. Because yeah, maybe he'll fight a guy like Sam Goodman, maybe. But I think once he gets done in that, like once he gets done with those names, then he should move up because there's so many interesting names at 126, right? You can fight a guy like Brandon Figueroa, who got knocked out by a guy like Neary. You could also fight Mark Mixayo. We haven't seen him in the ring for a really long time. Ray Vargas is an interesting name, and that's if he moves up potentially within a year or so. But I think that's the most interesting weight class because there are some really good names there, and that's the weight class that I kind of want to see him at. To be honest with you.
Jay says salute from Japan, and then he also had this comment that I had up earlier. Tapales is a really good boxer. He has great defense. Feel free to donate. The monetization is turned on, and if you'd like to, we would get to your comment right away. Obviously, we're trying to grow the channel, but you need finances to really do that. So anything is appreciated. Hustleman says Tapales was game, but you can see Inoue was playing with him. Inoue could have finished him early. That would have been nice as someone who bet him to win between rounds 1 through 6. But live bet accurately. We'll get to that in a second. But it seems like he wanted to set up a big shot and get some rounds in. Um, I give credit to Tapales' toughness also. He just hung around longer and took particularly the body shots better than I thought he would have. I thought the body was going to break him down, and it looked like it was going to, and then he would stay standing. He would pivot and figure out how to just, last a couple more seconds and then have his win and then go back to boxing.
I want to get to this comment because this comment is really interesting.
Mm.
Neary and MJ are good enough to have fights with before moving up. No need to give attention to a guy like Casemiro. The Casemiro fight's interesting because that was a fight that was supposed to happen, right? And I think everyone kind of wanted it. So makeshift. I agree with you. Like I think if he fights Neary and then fights, a guy like MJ, perfect. Perfect. Let's do that, right? Then he can move up, and there's some great fights in the next weight class. But that Casemiro fight, I think a lot of fans still want to see it. I would still want to see it. Brian, is that a fight that you would like to see?
I think I don't know if Casemiro is going to be as competitive as Marlon Tapales was, for example. You could argue that none of these guys that we're talking about will. Tapales was, after all, a unified champion in this weight class. I'm not as interested in Casemiro as I would be Luis Nery, who's probably number one on my wish list if he's going to stay in this weight class. Bad blood
I'm
with
with the bad
Casemiro,
blood.
we still need to
Yes.
see. Yeah, that's one thing that'll interest me. I just think from a competitive standpoint, like I'm not sure what Casemiro has that'll push in a way more than what we saw today. You know what I mean? Like but if you're telling me, hey, this is somebody in a way will want to take his head off very early, then yes, I'd be interested in that if they
Just for the
wanted to go that route.
storylines. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying?
Yeah.
Like, just for the storylines. Because to be honest with you, I thought Cool Boy Steph was going to have a great performance against Inoue, and he did it. Marlon Tapales fought way better than him. Had a different game plan, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
let's get to some more comments here. Let's give a shout out to a friend of the show, Brewski. Missed my alarm, missed the fight, but not surprised at all by the outcome. I think we all kind of saw this coming. Unless you were like a
Well, well,
diehard Marlon Tapales fan, because we just have some comments where people were like, Tapales could get it done, but
well, the thing is, Brewski, rewatch it, one, but also like it wasn't as it wasn't like it was a dominant in a way performance. But again, Martin Tapales was able to hang around for a long time. And Martin Tapales actually did some good things in landing on in a way, landing to the body, to the head in particular. His straight left hand was able to find its home a few times. And I think that's something that may have caught in a way off guard. Like there was some interesting things to watch there that I wonder if a future in a way opponent is going to like sort of have that in the back of their head. Although, it was against the Southpaw, and in a way hasn't struggled against Southpaw. It's not that he struggled today, but I just think there were some things here that it's like, oh, okay, like he almost looked mortal today.
Yeah, it's and you asked a pretty good question. Brian and I were texting during the fight, and you were like, "Does he look a little bit frustrated?" At times, I think Marlon Tapales kind of frustrated him a little bit. Not too much. I just think like Inoue would throw a body shot, a heavy or like a heavy right hand, and Tapales would take it,
Yeah,
right?
was
And
soccer
he
today.
survived. He survived after he got knocked down in the fourth round. I thought it was done. I was like, "Yo, the next round, Inoue's gonna go get it," but Tapales that strong, and he's just a warrior. It was like a great performance for him, even though he lost. And that's the thing. I think Marlon Tapales just earned himself more fights after that
Yes,
performance. Like, let's give him some credit because he is such a formidable opponent, former unified champ, obviously. We should get to some more comments here for sure.
let's get to
Um,
Dex. Dex, I'm not surprised you're up early, but thank you for watching. As always, Clifton Dennis, I don't think he was playing. I don't think Inoue was playing with him either. I think when he saw that Martin Zappalos was going to last a little bit longer than he expected, he became a little bit more tactical at times and was like, "All right, I'll find the opening later on," type of thing.
this is an interesting comment. I was just about to click that one.
Yeah, Hustle
Uh,
Van Rodriguez was in the house watching ringside, witnessing an all-time great. Could they meet up one day? I did not. I woke up again as soon as the fight was starting, so we could do this. So I did not know that Bam Rodriguez was there. Bam is at. He's still like there's still weight
he's still
classes
he's still a
apart.
young man.
Yeah,
That I don't think that's a fight that gets made for a while.
yeah.
But he is making his way through those weight classes.
And if we're talking about Inoue being a featherweight soon, that makes this even harder.
There's talk that Bam might fight a guy like El Gallo, which would be really, really cool. And then, you never know if he fights the legend Chocolatito as
That's who I
well.
want to see Bam Rodriguez
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like,
fight.
I want to see those fights first. But in the future, yeah, Hustle Man, I'd be down for that for sure. But I think that, like, Bam is still building that wave and his legacy as well. Whereas a guy like Inoue is, like, so established, right? You're undisputed in two weight classes. Like, you're that dude. Which brings me to let's do a couple of more comments, and then we can get to if we believe, and drop the comments now, you guys, if Inoue's pound for pound number one after this performance, because we want to know. Because listen, there's only a few more days until the end of the year, and we want to know if you think he's pound for pound in 2023. Um, this is an interesting one. Jesus is always bringing the heat. Bam doesn't have man strength yet. Yo, he's got some power there.
I don't know if he has 122 strength yet, which sounds funny to say out loud, but still like I think there are guys in this weight class he would beat, but again, still working his way through lighter weight classes. I don't think Bam and Naoya Inoue is something that's seriously going to happen at some point, if ever, because there's far apart right now in weight, or far apart right now in like stages of their career and what they're looking for. I think to me, if I had to set like odds on it, by the way, I think Luis Neri, because they're already like there's already been talks about that. He's probably the guy, and we probably see this in the spring or summer. And then after that, it's like, does it go Casemiro? We'll have to see what sort of happens in the weight class by then. Is Akhmadaliev back on the winning track by then? Um, I wonder what happens with a future Tapales fight, like who he fights next, and if who Tapales fights next actually beats Tapales, that person could get elevated up. If it's like a Sam Goodman who has a couple of really nice wins in his career so far, but I think Luis Neri is the next guy.
Yeah, Lewis Neri, I think, would be the most interesting fight to make because of the power that both these guys possess. And I think that's a moneymaker for a guy like Lewis Neri as well, that probably deserves a payday at this point. But let's get right into it, Brian. After this performance tonight or this morning, I guess, depending on what coast you're on, do you believe that Naoya Inoue is, in fact, number one pound for pound boxer in the world? It's a subjective question. Let me know your thoughts.
I'm not knocking Terrence Crawford off number one quite yet. It's still, yeah. I like how Tyrone puts it in the comments. Actually, Bud 1A, Inoue 1B.
I said this the other night.
Yeah, and I think it's really close. I still think it's Terrence Crawford. Like Terrence Crawford, the last I saw him, he destroyed Errol Spence. And people could say what they want about the weight cut and this and that. This was welterweight champion versus welterweight champion. Errol Spence was the A side. Errol Spence, I feel like, had at least at the start of the night more fans in the arena. He definitely had more fans on Twitter going into that fight. And Terrence Crawford beat his ass, knocked him down several times. At one point with a jab, it was weird to see him dominate like that. And maybe we'll get a rematch in 2024. I think that the rematch will be maybe a tad more competitive, but I still think Terrence Crawford's going to pick him apart and probably stop him again. So I think Terrence Crawford's number one, pound for pound. It's totally subjective. I think Inoue is easily next on the list. And we'll see what happens with Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, because I think it gets interesting, really, if Usyk wins, but regardless of who wins, because Fury still has to be on pound for pound lists. And then I think whoever wins that fight is probably going to be in the top three. I think Usyk already is third. So there's a conversation of, does he rise if he beats Tyson Fury? But Inoue is on that list and he's in the top two. Some people he's not two. And it's really a testament to like how great and how dominant he's been in his career. Because again, he got the knockout tonight. And it wasn't a TKO. It was a straight knockout. Marlon Tapales had nothing left, didn't answer the 10 counts. So to me, I think Tyrone nailed it. And I know you agree with him.
Yeah, I think it's 1A, 1B. I think it's interchangeable because Inoue is undisputed in 2 weight classes. That's crazy to me, and he did it in a year. The fact that he did it in a year, it's hard not to put him number 1, but then I take a look at what Bud Crawford did to a guy like Spence, dropping him 4 times in a fight where, listen, Spence was that dude before that fight. We're gonna see a rematch. I think it kinda goes the same way. Maybe Spence fights a little bit better, but it's hard not to have it's hard to pick. They're the top 2 guys in boxing right now. I think there are 2 really good faces to have in boxing of the sport. And I know some people are still learning about a guy like Inoue, but internationally, I mean, this guy is this dude. Like to be undisputed in 2 weight classes, I think he could edge it out for Bud for me. I think I might put Inoue 1A and put Bud 1B. Like just give him a slight edge in that, even if that's not an edge. And I think it's one of those things where if Inoue continues to do this, if he ends up getting a TKO or a KO on Lewis Neary, yeah, like he's running through these weight classes. So I think I give a little bit of the edge to Inoue because you're undisputed in 2 weight classes. But Bud is right there. It's a really, really tough question. I don't even if Tyson Fury beats Usyk, I don't think I place him above Bud and Inoue. I just can't.
I mean,
Um,
Crawford's also undisputed in 2 weight classes.
that's true.
So there's that too. Like that, I think people forget, like because he's been at welterweight so long. I think people forget, like he was dominant at lightweight. He was
But he's not
dominant
in
at
that way.
super
Yeah,
lightweight.
but he's not
Eh,
technically in that weight class where Inoue did it in a year, right? Becoming
Yeah,
undisputed in 2 weight classes. That's why I'm like, oh, I give him the edge there.
yeah. I'm still giving it to Buff for now, but it's very close. Let's see what the commenters say. And Jesus, by the way, also says I'd rather see Sam Goodman versus Inoue 122 next. I think the only person watching the show that has said that. I would be open to it. Because Sam Goodman, again, is one of the only guys you'll find who's still undefeated in this weight class who deserves a shot. And number one, by a couple of sanctioning bodies, or at least one. London Boy says, not a single mark on the monster. He looks prettier than he did when he walked in the ring. LOL. Thank you, London Boy, for the comment. All right, let's get to some pound for pound conversation. Tyrone the Gray says, yeah, you can edge Crawford. I think Bud would have been undisputed sooner, but the
For sure.
politics, I agree
I
with
agree.
that.
Yeah.
Makeshift 23, I'd give it to Inoue slightly over Bud because of how quick Inoue was able to become 2-time undisputed. This is what you were saying, Chantel. Not to mention winning 23 of his 26 fights by knockouts.
Crazy.
Hustle Man. It's hard to say. It's what you prefer. Inoue back-to-back undisputed, moved 122 and stopped the man and stopped the second best for undisputed. Yeah, I mean, look, him stopping Stephen Fulton, I think shocked a lot of
Crazy.
people in the way he did it,
I'm
right?
still stunned. Like I still don't know what happened. I remember watching that fight and just being like utterly in shock and disappointed. Like the fact that Marlon Tapales went 10 rounds with Inoue today and Stephen Fulton just couldn't get anything going. Like even when I said I gave 1 round to Fulton, people were like, "You're crazy."
Right. And Fulton would be probably the betting favorite if he fought Marlon Tapales right now.
Be
Although
quiet,
I think it'd be
we
slightly.
you have to be quiet because we just got a donation. Thank
Oh,
you, Clifton. We appreciate you. Once you donate, we read your comments right away all the
yes,
time, and we do
that's true.
appreciate you. No one is further ahead of their competition than the monster number one. I can't even argue that. Like
Yeah, well, the only argument is Terence Crawford. You can't argue
it's
Usyk.
tough.
Can't
Yeah,
argue Usyk. I don't think anyone's putting Usyk number 1. The only one you could argue is Terence Crawford because of how he beat Errol Spence.
yeah.
Yes, and this is the thing, Hustle, man. Like 21-0 in world title fights because after 5 fights, he was already fighting for world championships.
Like that stat is unreal. But I think right now boxing is in a really good place. I think we've got some really good fights this year. And hopefully we continue to get that in 2024. Any final comments that you guys have, let us know. We'll read them out before we get out of here. But Bryan, your final thoughts on the bout. And we have some pretty cool stuff coming up before the end of the year that we got people to look forward to.
That's true. We are not done yet. We are doing awards. We're gonna figure out a time and place this week. Well, a place, you know where it's gonna be, but a time. Still loopy. It's like 7:30 on the East Coast. But yeah, it's gonna be later this week. We're gonna hand out a few awards and also have our year end pound for pound list. So those will be the two things that we do. So this conversation will actually unfold a little bit more on the channel later this week, but we're definitely gonna have, fight of the year, fighter of the year, couple other things, and we'll sort of see what's what, run through the categories. It's funny, Michael Benson actually posted a list of all the fights that happened this year, and I was like, damn, this is and I was saying this as it was happening. I think this to me was boxing's best year since at least before COVID hit, at least
Yeah.
before the pandemic at some point. I would say its strongest year since, I don't know, maybe 2017, 18, 16. I feel like one of those years we got a lot of like good ass fights. Um, and I feel like there was a bit of a lull the last few years, and this is the first year that it felt like the sport fully recovered after the pandemic, and we started seeing good fights. Now, it's not enough because I still think a lot of you motherfuckers fighting once a year should probably fight for longer. Probably fight more than just once a year. But I think we're getting great fights regardless.
If I go back and take a look at the fights, and we should probably rank the fights of the year too, which we probably are going to do.
Mm.
I think about the fact we got Tank and
You're making this
Ryan.
harder and harder.
We got Tank and Ryan. We got Cool Boy Steph and Inoue. We got Charlo and Canelo, Bud and Spence, like Lomachenko and Devin Haney. I can go on. Regis Prograis and Devin Haney. Like there were some really, really great fights this year. So we're definitely going to bring you guys some more heat before the end of the year. Thank you to everyone that rocked with us. If you're on the West Coast like myself, it's not even 5 a.m. So we do appreciate you. And we do appreciate anyone that hopped on with us this morning on the East Coast. It's almost 8 o'clock. So we do appreciate you guys here in North America, of course. If you like the content, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for rocking with us and joining us this morning. Bryan, final thoughts to our viewers before we get up and out of here.
Yeah, if you missed the fight because it's so early, or if you're watching this afterwards and didn't see the fight yet, watch the fight because now you in a way, I put on the show again, and Marlon Tapales was hanging in there. There's some good things in that fight, and I would not count him out going forward as somebody who could reemerge as a contender in this weight class.
Yeah, Marlon Tapales is a true warrior and in a way undisputed in 2 weight classes. It's not even the end of the year yet. We got more heat coming. Make sure to subscribe to our show and thank you so much for rocking with us.